In this video, we're continuing the study of just the foundational elements of geometry, those parts of geometry that make up, that we use to develop and make up all other figures and shapes in the study of geometry. This is lesson 1-3 if you're following the applied geometry curriculum. We're going to introduce a couple of more things in this lesson, and we'll be about done with the essential elements of geometry. The first thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to use my straight edge to draw it, is the angle. That's a picture of an angle. I'm going to tip the arrows. This comes dangerously close to being a shape or a figure as opposed to an element, but it's used a lot to make up other shapes or closed figures, so I'm going to call it an element for our purposes. That's an angle. It's really formed by two rays. There's an endpoint, usually known as the vertex. Sometimes if it's turned upside down, it's the top of something. It may be called the apex, but most commonly that's the vertex of the angle where the two rays meet. But you'll see there's a ray going out forming one leg of the angle and a ray going out forming the other leg of the angle. Of course, you've seen angles, you've been exposed to these, and they can be any size. They can be acute, obtuse, and we're going to study them in more detail later. The measure of the angle is actually taken from measuring the arc from one leg to the other, and we'll demonstrate that in just a second with a tool called a protractor. But anyway, that's the angle. The next thing I want to talk about, I'm not sure it gets talked about a lot at any point in time because it's not as common as the angle, the line segment, but that's the arc. So an arc is a figure just like that, and what you'll recognize it as, it's curved. It's like a curved line. More specifically, an arc is actually a piece of a circle, and I'll do my best circle here. Not bad at all. So the arc is really just a segment of any circle. The arc also is made up of a series of points, but they're just curved now. They're no longer straight. There's curvature for some reason. There's a lot of cases where the points curve that you've already talked about, or you will eventually talk about some in algebra if you haven't, or you've already talked about them. But we'll spend a lot of time talking about the circle in geometry, and here's our case of where the arc comes into play. You'll hear us use the term arc a lot too. You'll see why as we move on in through this course if you're taking the applied geometry course. But anyway, part of a circle is an arc, and of course an entire circle is an entire arc as well. But when I'm talking about arc, there are times I may want to study just one little piece of it. In that case, I'm going to look at the point from the center of the circle extending out. That'll enclose an arc. And the arc measure is actually related to the measure of this angle.